years ago, and he came the next day after he had this experience, and it was something in his ear, and being a former nurse, I could see what looked like microsurgery behind his ear with something solid in his ear. I'm going to talk about implants in a minute. These are some of the other kinds of marks, and what people don't know is, if you're saying, well, this happens overnight because they've plonked the bedpost or something, these marks actually fluoresce under black ultraviolet light. Now, I don't think normal marks do that. Here's another one. There's all sorts of different kinds of marks that people have after experiencing this. And this is an interesting one, because this one here, as you can see, there's two dark areas, and there's actually what looked like a fine line of microsurgery going from one to the other. So, okay, so how do we know it's real? There's often trauma, and anyone here who's in the therapeutic arena will know that you only get trauma if there's been a real experience. So there's a real experience that has caused this, and certainly that happens with some of the people that have contact. Not all of them are traumatized by the actual ET contact itself. Some are traumatized because they can't talk about it to anyone. Because if they do, they're looked on as loony or crazy, and that traumatizes them. So we've got to look at as many ways people can be traumatized, and it isn't necessarily through their ET contact. It affects animals and plants, material objects, and you've seen tonight that Janet is talking about real physical scientific evidence showing us that something very anomalous but very real is happening. And it produces anomalies in the body. Now, there's a gentleman, a surgeon in America, Dr. Rodwell. I got him out 2 years ago for the Hidden Truths Conference. And the reason I got him is because he's already removed 11 of these physical implants from people's bodies in deep tissue that are not rejected by the body, that actually do not get, not only not rejected, but they have their own nerve supply. They're highly magnetized, and some of them actually contain the minerals that is seen in meteorite. What on earth are these objects doing in deep tissue in people's bodies after a contact experience? Okay, what have we got here? People are actually physically missing from their beds at times, found outside with all the doors and windows locked, not knowing how they got there. Sometimes their night clothes are missing, or they're in strange places. People have even found their night clothes actually are different to the ones they went to bed in. So this is very confusing and very frightening, Many people can have missing time episodes, and by that I mean they may be going on a journey to see Granny up in Wanneroo, for example. It should take them half an hour on the freeway as long as there's no traffic. But they find it takes them an hour and a half and there hasn't been any traffic. And sometimes they can't remember how they got there. Or they've found themselves 30 kilometres up the road from where they were, again, not knowing how they got there. So these are real physical things that people experience. And the other interesting thing is people are often healed on the craft, or at least a book by Preston Dennett where there is 100 documented healings, where someone, and some of them have been terminally ill, the doctor has said they will last a couple of days, perhaps before they actually die, and within that time, they will be completely healed, and what they'll talk about is they went up on a spaceship, and something was done that healed them. The doctors can't explain it. It's a very, very interesting book. And the other interesting thing with this is, by now you must realise that anyone who talks about aliens to their psychiatrist or whatever, some of them will be psychologically tested. And what has been found is that they have shown no psychopathology, in other words, have been perfectly sane. And there's a young lady I'm going to talk to you about who deliberately needed to know that she was sane. She's a lady that drew the beings that she saw, drawing complex images, remembers being on craft right from a small child, and she went and got herself was actually tested by a panel of 8 psychiatrists. She deliberately allowed them to interview her. She kept absolutely nothing back. There's a lady drawing the beings, and of the 8 psychiatrists, not one of them said afterwards to her that she was mentally ill. In fact, they actually wished her well, but none of them could come up with an explanation. So it's really interesting, isn't it? But the most exciting thing for me with all of this is that, like a near-death experience or something like this, you find somebody changed. And the People change after this experience and change in many, many ways, but it's like a complete and utter transformation in the way they see the world. And that is extremely exciting. Many of them have manifest higher senses, and by that I mean things like clairvoyance, clairaudience, seeing energy around people. They seem to be able to operate on a broader band of our multidimensional reality. So I'm saying healing abilities, they often do special kinds of psychic surgery, but they also change in the way they view the world, both in terms of our planet, how they feel connected in a broader sense to all that is, to one another. They get passionate about each other, about the way that we treat each other. So we're talking about spiritually, emotionally, and psychologically, completely and utterly changed. I'm only going to go through very briefly some of the indicators, because if you are interested in whether or not this is relevant to you, I've got a website, and on it you've got a questionnaire. Do that for your own well-being if you so desire. You don't have to share it with anyone. If it's relevant, you'll sense or know it. I'm only going to go through a few because I've got so much that I've got to pack in tonight. So, just some of the things are up here on the screen now. Often dreaming of mists and fogs, taking unusual tests are some of the kinds of things not everybody realises. Dreaming that maybe there's some kind of procedures being performed on you at night. Also, having dreams where you cannot move, and the classic is, what I call the Whitley Strieber classic example, is waking up at night and being unable to move, but being aware or sensing there's something or something around you. Often hearing a high-pitched sound in the room, maybe strange lights, for example, a sensation maybe of going through walls. These are some of the more classic forms of contact, but not everybody experiences like that. Some people actually feel watched or observed quite a lot. Seeing strange balls of light. Having a sense of a mission or purpose that you can't explain. And sometimes having a need to go to isolated places without knowing why. I'll explain what that means later. There are other things that you may experience too, having out-of-body experiences. And as I say, waking up in a place where you don't remember going to sleep. It can be very confronting. Finding your clothing rearranged, and for the children, this is very important. If you've got a child that's frightened of clowns, Santa Claus, owls with big eyes, some of the classic ones, other things like the praying mantis, crickets or spiders, sometimes this can be an indicator of contact experience. And the reason I'm saying that is, it seems that our visitors, when they actually encounter children, often present an image to them that they feel they'll be okay with. In other words, nobody's frightened of Santa Claus or a clown, are they? They should make you laugh. But the child somehow seems to sense that's not what they're seeing. And this creates a great deal of fear. And I've had children absolutely terrified of clowns, and it has been very much related to contact experiences. So again, what I want to just remind you is that this changes people on all these levels, and you don't get change this way unless something profound has happened to you. So there's a growing awareness of the environment, changes in values, far more holistic. Dietary changes often happen, changes in lifestyle, and changes in beliefs, and an opening of what we call a greater reality in terms of working on a broader frequency of reality. So okay, so if we say contact's real, and for some people all over the world this is very real, I don't know how many of you know that the Reader's Digest recently in the last couple of months did a survey on those that have seen lights in the sky, UFOs, or feel they've had an interaction with them. It's only a few months ago they surveyed 750 people, and 1 in 5 reckoned they'd seen a UFO in Australia. 1 in 5. And many of them also believe they had an interaction with them. Now you do your numbers and arithmetic, but I think you'll be quite interested in what you come up with. This is a reconstruction of what the dinosaur would look like if the dinosaurs hadn't been, if the catastrophe hadn't happened and they hadn't been wiped out. It's a really interesting one for me because this is what many people see when they encounter one of the small grey beings. And this is a very classic one. This is